think of something, we'll be okay. Look into the lens. Practical response. So today for the practical response, me and Rebecca went out, we ended up filming some stuff. I decided for mine, I wanted to experiment with a gimbal. Okay, bit more enthusiasm, bit of oomph. I can do this. I believe in you, Kyle. You got this. For the professional practice. No, not professional practice. This is not professional practice. What am I doing? So, if we're going to talk about this, we've got to go back to the beginning. What I want to do for my practical response. My aim for this, I want to create something bigger than I've ever done before. I want to pull out all the stops, I want to do my best, and I really want to leave a mark with this, if that makes sense. This is something that it's very special to me. I feel like I've just been building up to this from the start, and I really want to leave that impact. So for this, I really want to do, for my final project anyway, a post-apocalyptic comedy series. This following 3 characters, Mortimer, Dusty, and Elliot. One of them, Mortimer, he's an eccentric egotist who basically knows he's in a TV show and loves to make those sort of jokes and fourth wall breaks, in which that I feel like it could add a really cool dynamic to something where usually I stick to stuff very serious, and I try to make stuff that, even though I want it to be dramatic and impactful, it lacks that sort of interaction with the audience. All my stuff so far, it has really been more visual based than story based, and I really want to change that with this. I want to create something that it's really going to impact sort of the storyline, which is kind of ironic since what I've done for my practical response so far. So for my first bit of experimentation, me and Rebecca decided to go out and mess about with gimbal, because I decided it would be a good idea to buy a gimbal. One of my lovely impulse purchases over Christmas. We decided we'd start off with a running sequence. So what we did was we lined each other up and then tried to match each other's pace. The first time, almost broke her ankle. But then we decided, you know what, let's try and coordinate this a little bit better. Got her off the grass so it is a little bit more safe. And then we also tried to match our pace with this one instead of just running top speed, hoping we'd get some. And then as we sort of worked on it, we got some actual usable results, which honestly, I didn't think we'd get it within the 3rd take, but we did. Then we decided, you know what, I wanted to sort of get her to grips with how to use a gimbal, so walked her through some of the process, and she got some shots of me trying to sort of use the gimbal for the first time, and it was such a learning curve for both of us, because there was that method of teamwork. I had to guide her on how to use it whilst we were filming. And I don't know, I really feel like it helped with that team building exercise with it. That, I don't know, I've never really had that since a lot of my projects I've done on my own. I've been a one-man band, I've done all the audio, the editing, the filming, all myself. If I ever wanted to film myself, I'd use something like this, a tripod in a room with a light. This, it had an hour preparation, sorting out a backdrop, sorting out lighting equipment. I would usually do it all. But with this, that sort of essence of teamwork, it really added something new that I really enjoy with this sort of project. So I really feel this brought us together and added that teamwork element to this project, which honestly I'm really excited about implementing more in the future. So after these experiments, I had an idea. I wanted to strap the gimbal to a monopod, or in this case, a boom arm. We managed to get amazing shots like this, where normally I'm not that tall, I can't reach that high, where using that boom pole attached to the bottom of the gimbal, it really allowed me to get up into the tree from the flower and add that really dynamic movement. And stuff like that implemented in for revealing shots, for showing the scale of stuff in the distance, I feel it could really be used and implemented well with a bit of technology like this. Now, third and finally, we decided we would try and do orbital shots. These, I had never really tried it before, and this was a big learning experience for me. What we did was, I maintained a certain distance, and I walked around Rebecca, but then I noticed the first hurdle and what I had to overcome. Just aiming the camera at her wasn't working. I had to position my entire body and move with the camera, which, I don't know, it just it seemed so natural once I'd realised, and I felt like I was part of the equipment, if that makes any sense. But it was a really interesting experience, and by the end we got an amazing shot like this. And I find that absolutely remarkable that even on our second attempt with this one, because that took 2 attempts to get something right, I definitely feel like it worked really well. And we also got this amazing shot when I decided to push the gimbal through the bush, which honestly, that is my favourite shot from all of this. I have loved every second of this so far, but that one shot, that hands down my favourite, with the colours, with the movement, it just works so well. Now we get on to the problems I've had. So far, I've decided I want to shoot something telephoto. I want to base this entire project using something like the 100mm macro or the 70-200. The only problem is, they're too heavy for a gimbal. Strapping it to the Ronin SC, which I have, it just cannot carry the weight, not without a counterbalance system. And the 70-200, that is just way too heavy to put on any gimbal of this size. It just would not carry that weight. So, after attempts and attempts of trying to get the 100mm to work on this, we realised it's front heavy. But we have 2 options. The first, invest in a counterweight system. Find a way to make the body of the camera more heavy. That way, I can strap that to the gimbal, hopefully staying within the payload weight and balancing out the 100mm macro. The only issue with that, I've also got to strap a follow focus motor system to that as well, which is going to add extra weight to the front of the camera, which is what I'm trying to combat. And that is not going to really help, especially since 100mm macro, due to an issue with the lens, autofocus doesn't work. It's a fully manual lens, and I would have to use that follow focus system, which it's a little bit difficult when you're adding the extra weight. So that brings me on to option 2. This camera, the XA25. If you strip this down without the top handle, so no audio recording on the camera, you take off the lens hood and you bring it down to its simplest form, it just about fits on a gimbal. It's within payload. I've got a decent enough amount of movement. The only problem is with the battery in the back, it interferes with the back of the gimbal. So, for that, I've got 2 options, one better than the other. The first is external power. Get something like a V-mount battery or some sort of external power source that supports DC out, and hopefully if it has the same ampage and wattage, I can then connect it to the camera and just have a cable coming off with potentially a power bank in my pocket. My second option is then to use it with the battery. The only problem with that is it doesn't really work how it's meant to. The main problem with that is the battery interferes with the back of the gimbal. This means I cannot get anything more than a horizontal angle on this. If I try and go any further up, it doesn't work. Whereas if I want to get shots looking down on stuff or moving side to side, it works perfectly. There's no interference there, and I can get amazing shots using the gimbal and the XA25, especially with the XA25's internal image stabilization. If I crank this up to the maximum zoom and handheld it on a gimbal, it looks like a tripod shot. I can get away with using telephoto on this, which is the look I want to achieve, but in a body that doesn't extend the lens or shift the weight, which is going to be really beneficial for a project like this where time matters. We've got 12 weeks on this project, which we're already eating into, which the less time I have to spend changing out lenses, rebalancing gimbals, the better. Which is why I reckon the XA25 is going to be my best option, unless I want to change that factor of shooting completely on telephoto. Because the main issue I have is, in terms of the lenses I own, I only have a 35mm prime for my Fujifilm and a 50mm for my Canon, as well as the 18-55 kit lens, but that doesn't really work as well. My other option would be shifting over to wide angle and going the complete opposite end of the spectrum. This would be using something like the 17-40mm f4 L lens from Canon, strapping that to my Canon 800D and then using that for the system, but I don't know. I'm not sure on what I want to do with that, because then I've got the issue of recording audio. Whereas with the XA25, I've then got access to a Rode NTG1, which as you can hear, it's an incredible microphone. The only thing similar to this that I've got is the Rode VideoMic Go, which it can have some audio issues in terms of interference with a cable, and it just isn't a very sturdy microphone. It tends to fall off my camera a lot, which is where a system like this would really come in handy, because that reliability means more time I can spend crafting the project, focusing on making stuff like this, documenting that journey, and I really feel like it would be beneficial to save that time when filming and spend more time getting the shots I want rather than having to adjust settings constantly. Another option I have in terms of using the Fujifilm camera is to use something like this. These here are my manual Nikon lenses that I have an adapter to the Fuji X mount, in which these, I can strap these on the camera, strap the follow focus system on, and using a counterweight system, again, counterweights which aren't the best, I could get a 4K image using something like this here, using something like this here, the 80-210 from Tamron. It's an f3.8, so you're still getting that out of focus background, but I would be extremely reliant on that follow focus system. I would have to control it all, make sure I'm getting the shot, and I just feel the autofocus on something like this would really be beneficial. But it's not in concrete that I'm going to use this. I'm going to keep experimenting, find the look I want, because I have no experience with the X-A25. This is my second time recording on one, and I just don't know the system well enough to trust an entire project on it. Whereas with the Fuji and the Canon systems, in terms of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, I'm used to those systems, I know the picture profiles, I've got those custom presets, and I can get an incredible look straight out of camera. Whereas with this, I am going to have to tweak it. And as well as that, I'm locked at 1080p. That being 1080 50i, which it isn't the best since it's interlaced. Technically, this is just shooting 1080p 25 frames per second, which it's okay. I can use this, but preferably for that flexibility in post in case I need to reframe a shot. The 4K on the Fujifilm X-T3, I am getting so much more out of that in terms of post-production and just image clarity as well, since even though this is an incredible camera, in terms of image clarity, this is using an isolated studio environment where I've got a light set to its maximum settings. I've got this all tweaked in with acoustic panels and stuff like that. If I then use this in a set environment where I'm in the woods or I'm in a field, there's no guarantee that the lighting is going to work for me. But I'm not sure. I'm definitely leaning more towards the X-A25 than the Canon system, but I still want to try and implement the Fujifilm system in there somewhere. So for example, if I didn't shoot it all telephoto, I just tried to as much as I can. Using the Fujifilm for example, establishing shots, since I've got these here and the 35mm, I could use this for tripod shots or close-ups and try and implement stuff that way. In terms of closure on this, I feel like I have a good direction of where I'm going, but with this being the initial ideas and experimentations, I definitely want to experiment more with using the X-A25, get to grips with that, see if I can understand that system, and then begin shooting these sort of sequences like Edgar Wright, and then from there strap that to a gimbal, see if that is going to work for me for the style I want to shoot, and then if it does, perfect. I've got a camera, I've got a sequence, and then I can begin work on that final project. But so far, I'm still very on the fence about what system I want to use and what direction I want to go in, because with every solution there's problems that go with that. But only time will tell.